Hey there, I'm Ian Douglas. I'm the author of the website techinterview.guide, and I'm here to help people with career advancement and interview preparation. My live stream on Twitch covers topics such as company research, how to build resumes and cover letters, applying for the job, getting through interviews, and what to do during negotiations. I've coached thousands and thousands of people over the years to get jobs at the biggest tech companies in the industry, and I'm here to help you too. The following episode is taken from a longer live stream event and may contain interactions with other people in chat. Check out the end of the episode for more information. Let's get to it. And so one of the things that I've built for my stream that you'll see show up in the chat up here is little clip markers that'll say like clip start and clip end. That's so that I can trim this out later as a YouTube video. I like to make shorter YouTube videos out of like asking and answering questions and doing resume reviews and job post critiques and things like that. And so you can go check out my YouTube channel as well if you like. I've got playlists on there for those, and you'll be able to go check those out as well. So let's dive in on a resume review. So we had an anonymized resume come in, and so we're going to do a quick review on that. So as with most resumes, what I like to do is kind of zoom out and take a look at what's on here. And this one's kind of a really long format. They're using up a good solid 4 pages on here. So we'll dive in a little bit on the overall format. So again, what I like to recommend to people is build a really big resume like this. But when you go to apply for a job, trim it back down to 1 or 2 pages, because companies aren't going to care about all the content on here. Even the European CV, which used to be a really gigantic sort of format document, you don't need that anymore, even in Europe anymore. I've actually spoken with European recruiters over there. They also prefer a 1 or 2 page resume nowadays. And so having something that you can kind of shorten back down to 2 pages would be ideal. And it's a lot easier to come back in and trim stuff out than it is to rebuild a resume from scratch. And so I like to use a riddle of how do you make a sculpture of an elephant? You start with a big block of concrete and you chip away everything that doesn't look like an elephant. And you can do the same thing with a resume. How do you look like the best candidate for the job? You start with a big resume and you trim it back down to only the things that the company cares about, so you look like the best candidate for that job. So you only want to show them the skills and the things that they're actually going to care about on the resume. Hey, Whip, good to see you in chat. So let's dive in on this one a little bit. So they anonymize their contact information here, and then they immediately start with education. There are a lot of different feelings on like what should you put first on the resume. As a hiring manager, this is just my opinion. Everybody's got opinions. They're like armpits. Some of them stink. You don't have to take my advice on this, but as a hiring manager, I like to see the skills block first. I don't care as much about where you went to school. Now, some companies, like we looked at a job post earlier, and that job post, they basically required a CS degree. And so in that case, if there's like a super hard requirement that you have to have a specific degree or certification, then you want that up at the very top as well. But if you're applying for jobs that are not necessarily like where you don't need a CS degree, or in this case, they've got an engineering, they're a certified manufacturing engineer. They don't say where they went to school, but I imagine it's on the real resume. But if you're looking for, I might need a little more context on this one, but I'll go look at the incoming message in a moment. But generally, I would want to see a skills block at the top. Like, what are the core competencies that you're bringing to the job? Now, I do title my stream like Tech Interview Guide. That is the name of the website. You can literally type all that in your browser and it'll go find the website. But I do like to kind of offer generalized advice on things that are not specific to the tech industry or programming and things like that. And so we're going to go over this resume, and there's going to be a lot of stuff on here that I'm not going to be familiar with, and that's okay. So taking a look at the note that came with the resume: multiple years in the petrochemical industry and manufacturing, strong background in training, looking to see if I should leave off any work history or order things differently or other suggestions. So that's kind of the context that we're going to frame this in. So they're looking for just general layout, format, like what should I mention, what should I not mention. So again, with most resumes, as I've said earlier on this stream and other streams, you generally don't want your bullet points to wrap around multiple lines if you can help it. Having the vertical bar here doesn't make as much sense really for the job history as far as the timeline goes. Also, these timelines aren't all like vertically lined up. They're all kind of often in different places. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I'm going to rebuild your resume. So let me go back over here, and we're just going to use this document. Let me go reformat this page setup, do portrait mode. You didn't know you were going to get a customized resume on the stream today, did you? All right, let's see if we can grab a better copy and paste off of this PDF. Sometimes it's not always possible, but we'll see. Nope, it's really not going to do that for us. All right, so let's see if I can just open this in Google Doc or Google Drive. Let's see. Let me do this. Let me go over to guide. And I'm just going to drop the resume in there. And see if we can open it from here. Open Google Docs. And then I'm going to show you how I might reformat some of this as we go. There we go. Much better. So the first thing I do is I highlight everything on here. I say normal text, and I make everything 10-point font. So you get 3 font sizes on a resume. You get 1 font size for all the main content. You get 1 font size for your name and 1 font size for your headings. So we're going to come back in here, and your name is going to be like 18-point font. Headings like education, that's going to get 12-point font. So then this is your work history, so that's going to be 12-point font. And I might throw like a bold or something on there. So what you want to do is you want to start by making a right margin tab stop over here. So what I'm going to do in Google Docs is I'm just going to right click in here. I'm going to say add a right tab stop. And I'm going to put it over on that margin. So you can drag it from here. I'm just going to put it over on that margin. So now when I come over here to these dates, I can hit the tab and it automatically pushes that over here. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change these to just 3 letters. And instead of that vertical bar, I'm going to put a dash instead. It's more interruptive to the human mind to see a character that we're not used to seeing. That vertical bar is very interruptive to reading. And so that would be the first thing I would do is take out the vertical bars, just put dashes in there. But now these dates are all going to be lined up over on that right margin over here. So again, when we come back over here and I hit tab on this, now it's exactly lined up on that right margin, where in the original resume it wasn't. So I would be looking for things like that, like just try to find the easiest way possible of reformatting some of this if you can. And then as much as possible, again, we want to try to make these not go underneath the dates. And so operated the hydro treating and hydro cracking unit daily to meet target specs. So I would just say operated hydro heating / hydro heating unit. I would say like, yeah, daily, comma, meeting target specs of jet fuel, comma, butane. I mean, it doesn't quite stop before it gets underneath the date, but it's certainly short enough. So again, bullet points don't have to be grammatically correct. Performed lineup changes for various petroleum products to or from storage tanks and spheres. Ran the utilities unit daily, including reverse osmosis, cation systems, purifying feed water. So this is getting really long because you're explaining so many things in here. I might actually make this a bullet point, but like indent it a little bit as well. So the other thing with adding bullet points on here is you can actually drag these bullet points back to be more on that right margin, similar to what you've got here. This actually put that in as an actual character on the resume. copied over from the PDF. So what you might want to do is like indent that bullet point or something like that. But again, that's only going to matter if these bullet points are going to be something that that company is going to care about. So it's okay to like make that really big resume with all of this content on here, but then you still want to trim it down to one page. So you're kind of getting where I'm going with this as far as like reformatting that. So, and then you could put all of this actually on this line here as well. So you've got the name of the company, and then you've got like your role, and then you've got the date kind of all on one line. That would be a way to sort of shorten this up a little bit so you're not using quite as much vertical space. And then I would just throw a bold or something on the name of the company, things like that. So that was the first thing that I wanted to show is like, how do we get those dates all sort of aligned on this right margin? So now we can see that all these dates now line up here vertically, where in the original resume here, they didn't. Like this one's over on the right edge, but these lines aren't the same size. This one's actually over a little more on the left, and these dates don't all line up. And so those are the kinds of things where like people are going to look at it and go, huh, okay, it's a little off. And you don't want people to look at your resume and go, oh, that's a little off. And so having ways of like reformatting that where you can just push them all into like a sort of a right tab stop like that is going to be super helpful, just to align all those things a little bit better. Now, when it comes to these lines, I mean, take them or leave them. I like not having them on there, but I think it's okay to have them on there. We looked at a resume on the stream earlier that had horizontal rules on there, and I think that's okay too. But again, this font looks very different than the other fonts that you're kind of using on the page. This one had a dot after the word work. So again, you want to try to standardize on how these things are presented as much as possible. Now, the overall comment that we got with this was, should I leave off any particular work history or order things differently? I would always order things in a chronological order. Now, in this case, you had a tiny bit of a gap between these two jobs, but that's totally fine. No one's going to care about a 2 or 3 month gap. If it's like more than 6 months long, you might need to explain it, but I would otherwise look at this and go, okay, you took the holidays off and started a new job. Now, in this case, you were only there for 7 months, and it looks like you've been not working since. And so this might stand out to people as you're applying for a job of like, what have you been doing for the past year? So that would be one thing that might come up on a resume like this is, okay, have you been unemployed? Have you been doing something else? Have you been taking other training? Like, what have you been doing with that time? And so this could be where you might want some kind of explanation, maybe in a cover letter and say, like, I left that job in July 2021, and I've been sort of keeping up to date on industry standards by learning such and such and reviewing training materials. Like, what have you been doing with that year? They would probably want to know that kind of thing. Otherwise, like you were at this job for 7 months, you're at this job for a year, you were at this job less than a year. Actually, this is the same company. So I wouldn't actually list this as a second option here. So let's go back over to the resume over here. So what I would do for that is instead of listing the company a second time, what I might do here, this would be where I would actually put these on different lines. So you're showing that you worked at the same company, just in 2 different roles. And then this was a different company. So now we can kind of see here, okay, well, we had one company with their title. Now in this case, because we're doing the title and date on one line different than the company name, then again, we want to standardize and do that for all of them, because you had multiple roles at this particular job. Now you may want to like throw like an italic or something on this just to show, that there's a slight difference, or like an underline or something maybe instead, where you can show, kind of that progression in skill. But otherwise, yeah, you're explaining a lot of stuff at that role. So what I would probably do, if you're applying for another role that's going to combine these kinds of skills, I think you could condense it and not explain quite as much about it. But I think, obviously putting stuff like OSHA guidelines and things like that, like those are definitely going to stand out because that's really important for, petroleum production and so on. So those kinds of things will be very necessary. And then, I'm using a tool called Grammarly, which finds all kinds of things like, make sure you add those dashes and get rid of the thing. Now, in this case, it actually found the same text like over and over again. So you also don't want to be redundant on the resume and like listing the exact same, create work orders and job packages using SAP, like you've got this exact same text on all of these jobs. So I would probably find a way to condense that, but also not be repetitive, and listing it for like everything. Because when you think about it, you did it for operator 1, you also did it as operator 2. Yes, it is part of your job, but I think that you could find a way to do it in a less repetitive sort of fashion. So just looking for things like that. So the overall question was like, should I reduce anything about this? Like your Anheuser-Busch job here, you're explaining a lot of stuff. And again, you were at that job twice. So again, just having a slightly different way of laying that out where it's easier to see, like the different roles that you had at that company. So I would do something like that, where they can see a little bit better, like, oh, it was a second role at the same company kind of thing. And then again, we want to be uniform and say like all my other job titles were underlined. So I'm also going to underline that one at the top. Just that way it makes it a little easier to sort of see from there. Now we get into a skills block. So that skills block is going to be a 12-point header. Maybe want to throw a bold or something on that. And then we're getting into these kinds of things. So on one hand, I like that you're sort of quantifying like how much you've used these skills. So if we come down here to the skills block, you're quantifying for me like how many years of experience you actually have on these things. This could be really meaningful. Like that job post that we looked at from Valero at the beginning of the stream, they were calling out very specific quantities of time for very specific like technologies and skills and things like that. So that could be something that you might want to look into as well. One thing that stands out to me about this font is it looks like it's sort of it looks like it's compressed vertically. Like it looks like the letters got wider from this header here as opposed to the text that you're using here. So again, you want to make sure that everything is the same font on the page. So again, I would probably come in here and just highlight everything. Just make sure it's all the same font face. Like just make it all the same. As much as possible. You don't want to be too detailed as far as like trying to throw different kinds of font faces and stuff in here. You want the resume to be relatively simple to read. So other projects and stuff that you've done, these are all fine. Now, some of these projects you did at specific jobs, so I think that that's okay. Having awards on there will definitely stand out, especially if they're safety related. But again, like making sure that like this line break here doesn't happen would be helpful. And then again, these things could be pushed up against that right margin as well. Hobbies, 3D printing, hooray, 3D printing. Again, if the company doesn't care about this stuff, then you don't need to put the hobby on here. Hobbies are great for like really standing out to a company. So if you're going to go work at like a petrochemical company that's making 3D printing filaments or something, then yeah, putting 3D printing on as a hobby is relevant to that company. Most of these hobbies are not going to be relevant to any company. Now, the electronics programming might be. If you do a little bit of coding, you could probably also list that in your skills here, because you mentioned like Fusion 360 and so on. But again, like that's only going to be important for specific kinds of roles. If a company doesn't need you to do 3D modeling, take it off the resume. You want the resume to only show them the immediate value and skill that you're bringing to them for their job post. If you need extra room, like if you need to finish filling up a second page, then you can add additional stuff as you see fit. But otherwise, I would try to remove as much as possible that's not going to be applicable. It's neat that you have the experience, but because it's not required at that particular job, it's just taking up space. And you don't want to send somebody a 4-page resume. No one's going to read it. they're going to read through page 1. Page 1 should be the most pertinent information. Page 2 should be kind of supplemental, like this is also really good to know, and then kind of cap it there. So again, starting with a really big resume, great idea, but trim it back down to like 1 page or 2 page when you're actually ready to apply for a job. That's what I would aim for there. Midnight Smith says 1 font, noting that down. 3 sizes, but 1 font. Yeah, as much as possible. I would stick with 1 font, those 3 sizes. So 1 font size for all of the content, which I typically aim for like 10-point font. Your headers can be a second font size. I would typically aim for like a 12-point font, and then like put it all in caps or put a bold or something so it kind of stands out a little bit more. And then your name, like whatever your full name is, and whether you want to throw a bold on there, whatever. But again, that way it all looks more uniform from that perspective. It all kind of looks the same. Some people are going to look at that and go, oh, it's too plain. Like I want to add some like, sort of flavor or whatever. Well, then put some color in there. Like you can, it's like you want your name to be kind of that cobalt blue. Fine. Make some of the headers like a slightly different color then, but be consistent. Make them all that same color, but like don't go overboard. The first resume that we reviewed on the stream had a big block header, which is fine. That big block header is okay. People that print out your resume on a black and white printer are probably going to hate you if you do that too much, because you're going to use up a ton of toner. But just as long as the contrast is good, then a little bit of color is fine. If you want like a block header at the very top, that's okay too. Again, similar to what we said in another resume review that was multiple pages, you also want to make sure that the second page also has your contact information at the top. So if the pages ever do get separated, then they know who the second page belongs to. So that'd be a handful of things there. Hey, MayBC, good to see you in chat. I'll go back through chat here in a minute and kind of catch up on some other stuff. So that would be kind of how I'd take a look at that. Let me show you. One of my resumes. So this is how I formatted one of my resumes for getting my developer relations role at Postman. So in my case, I do put a summary on here because I do want to show that immediate value. Like this is what I bring. I'm a trainer. I do live streaming. I do webinars. I do workshops. I've got experience in multiple languages and so on. And so in my case, I really wanted to emphasize that. And then I immediately go into my skills block. Now, I know a whole lot more skills than what I list here, but these are the core skills that I want to present as, this is what I do, this is what I'm capable of. And then most relevant experience. And then I put a thing on here, like if you want my whole work history, go check out my LinkedIn. And that's up here at the top. So they can go see my LinkedIn profile, and they will literally see every job I've ever had and lots of bullet points on everything. So my LinkedIn is what I call sort of my source of truth, as we might call it. And so my resume here is like, this is the most relevant stuff you need to know. And then my second page, this is other notable experience. Like this is other experience that I really want you to know about me, but it's not as important as page 1. Like if you print this on a printer and you walk away from page 1 and page 2 is still printing and all you walk away with is page 1, you still have everything you need to know about me wanting your job. Page 2 is like the icing on the cake, as I would say. It's extra stuff. I was a director of engineering. I worked at a game company, et cetera, et cetera. And then some of my education that I put on here. And then my cover letter. Now I typically tell people do a three paragraph cover letter. I kind of deviated from that myself. But this is the cover letter that I wrote. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas too, as far as like layout goes. But again, same thing with that right justification sort of margin over here. And as much as possible, I tried to sort of keep text away from here as well, so you can kind of see these dates in sort of that visual column, even though I haven't specifically made it like a table column. Now, as far as laying this out, I actually did put these into table. I actually made like a 3-column table for my contact information at the top, just so I could lay that out more horizontally as opposed to taking up vertical space. You can take that or leave it, but that's an example of how I did my resume for various developer relations roles, and or developer roles, director level roles. And my job hunt back in December and January, I got 6 job offers out of it. So, and that's not just the resume. I mean, the resume is just to get them to call you, and then you have to get through the interviews. But these resumes were formatted well enough that it got them to call me. And then from there, I had to make it through the interview. Cool. So hopefully that answered everything that we needed over here for Nick. So again, I think starting with a really big resume like this and then eventually trimming it down to 1 page or 2 pages, I think would be ideal. Now, depending on the kind of role where you're going to go apply, do you need to give me like tons of bullet points about every job? Probably not. You could probably get away with like just the 2 most important bullet points that you need to tell me about a job from several years ago. Like this job was almost a decade ago. Well, I mean, 5 years ago, I guess, was when you stopped at that job. But like that would be the kind of thing that I would look at, is like, how recent is the job? The less recent the job is, the fewer bullet points you should give me as well. And so your most recent job, give me lots of bullet points. Like 5 bullet points here, totally okay. Marathon, it's less recent. I'd probably go to 3 bullet points for this role, maybe 3 bullet points for this other role at the same company. And then Anheuser-Busch, like maybe condense that down to 2 bullet points of like the key things. And you can always, you can put a little note on there, like steal what I did on mine, where you can say like, for the full history, go see my LinkedIn, go put all of this stuff on LinkedIn. And so if they want to see like all of that detail, they can go to LinkedIn and they'll see all the bullet points. That would be what I would do there. Just that way you're condensing to only showing them like the highlights of what you did at that job, and not every single like job detail that you did. You want to show them like this was what I did and this was the impact that it had. So when we're writing out bullet points like this, we talk about using action verbs like I developed, I created, I made, I hired, whatever, but then quantify it if you can, and then tell me what impact that had. So how did that help the company? How did that improve a process? If you say I improved, compilation time of our software. Okay, great. By how much? Like 5%, 10%, 50%? Like how much better did you make it? And then what impact did that have on the team? It led to an overall team process improvement or whatever. That kind of stuff looks great on a resume. So having action verbs where you can quantify some information but talk about the impact. So over time, like you had several roles at Anheuser-Busch as well. So again, 2 bullet points for this role, maybe 2 bullet points for this role, but don't put the same bullet point. So again, we kind of come back up here and you have this bullet point of created the work orders using SAP. Like tell me that once on the resume. Don't tell me that same thing at every job. Tell me something a little different. And then you can say like, yeah, I actually did this at all of these other jobs, but for the sake of the resume, I condensed it, whatever. You can explain that once you get into the interview process. So that would be how I would kind of condense that stuff down a little bit. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Thanks for checking that out. I hope that you found it helpful. I always appreciate feedback, so please let me know what you think. I appreciate any subscriptions, so please tell your friends and colleagues about it as well. Check out the website techinterview.guide for more information about when I'm live streaming and all of my free content. Drop by a live stream anytime to ask questions or message me privately, whatever makes you most comfortable. See you next time.